In Earth's Mightiest Heroes, there is a moment that most people watch as a side detail and move past. The Avengers are dealing with the fallout of the S.H.I.E.L.D. invasion. The whole world has just watched what they believed was Captain America go on television and tell humanity to surrender to an alien race. The real Steve Rogers is back. The Skrull is exposed. The crisis is over. And the first thing Steve Rogers does when he returns is walk away. Not from the Avengers, not from the mission. He walks away from the public moment, from the cameras, from the celebration, because Steve Rogers does not celebrate the win. He is already thinking about how it happened. How does an organization like S.H.I.E.L.D., with the resources and intelligence infrastructure of a global peacekeeping body, fail to notice that its own Captain America had been replaced by an alien shapeshifter for months? How does the most powerful security apparatus on the planet get that compromised, that completely, without a single internal alarm going off? Nobody around him is asking that question. They are too busy processing the win. Steve Rogers had been asking that question since the first episode of the series. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand that the Skrull invasion was not the failure of the Avengers. It was the bill arriving for everything S.H.I.E.L.D. had been getting wrong for 2 seasons, while Captain America kept pointing at the cracks and nobody listened. And it all starts with understanding one thing, not the S.H.I.E.L.D., not the super soldier serum, what Steve Rogers actually is underneath all of it. Steve Rogers came out of the ice into a world built entirely on the institutional logic of organizations like S.H.I.E.L.D., a world where security meant surveillance, where safety meant control, where the right people having the right clearances was supposed to be enough to keep everything from falling apart. And Steve Rogers, who had fought in a war where every institution around him was compromised before the final battle was over, looked at that world and immediately understood something the people running those institutions did not. An organization is only as trustworthy as the people inside it, and the people inside it are only as trustworthy as the culture that shaped them. S.H.I.E.L.D. had power, reach, and infrastructure. It did not have the one thing Steve Rogers had spent his entire life building, a moral line it would not cross, regardless of the outcome. That is not naivety. That is the most sophisticated institutional critique in the entire series. And the show spends 2 seasons proving him right every single time S.H.I.E.L.D. prioritizes the mission over the principle. The first warning appears before Cap even joins the Avengers properly. From the very first episode, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s relationship with the truth is selective. Nick Fury runs Black Widow as a double agent inside Hydra, without telling the Avengers, without telling his own organization's rank and file, without building any structure around the operation that would protect her if it went wrong. And it does go wrong. When Black Widow comes to the Avengers for help during the Hail Hydra episode, nobody inside S.H.I.E.L.D. will vouch for her, because nobody inside S.H.I.E.L.D. knew she was working for Fury. She is branded a traitor by the organization she was working for, because Fury ran the operation so far off the books that when things fell apart, there was no record of what she was actually doing. Steve Rogers looks at that situation and sees something the rest of the team does not. Not a tactical failure, a structural one. An intelligence organization that conducts operations so secretly that it cannot distinguish its own assets from actual enemies is an organization that has already lost the ability to know what it is doing. That is warning number 1. And S.H.I.E.L.D. does not change anything about how it operates. The second warning comes with Prison 42. S.H.I.E.L.D. builds a supervillain prison in the negative zone, a dimensional void outside normal space, outside normal jurisdiction, outside any meaningful oversight. The Avengers discover it exists. Steve Rogers' reaction is not tactical concern about the security protocols. It is immediate, direct, moral objection. You cannot imprison people in a dimension outside normal space and call it justice. Not because it is not effective, because effectiveness is not the only metric that matters. The moment you build a system that operates outside any accountability structure, because it is easier that way, you have created the exact kind of institution that history has proven will eventually be used for the wrong purpose by the wrong people. The rest of the team treats Prison 42 as a practical problem to be managed. Steve treats it as a warning sign about what S.H.I.E.L.D. is becoming. He is right again. When Annihilus and his forces invade Prison 42 in the episode Assault on 42, the entire prison becomes a crisis that the Avengers have to manage from inside a dimension nobody else can reach. The lack of oversight that made Prison 42 convenient to build is the exact thing that makes it catastrophic to defend. The structure S.H.I.E.L.D. built for efficiency becomes the vulnerability that nearly destroys everyone inside it. But here is the moment that should make you stop and rewatch the entire series with different eyes. During the Skrull arc, Nick Fury goes dark. He disappears from S.H.I.E.L.D. He is running his own operation in the shadows, building his own intelligence network, making his own calls about who to trust and what information to share and when. He does this because he has concluded that S.H.I.E.L.D. itself cannot be trusted. Think about what that means. The director of S.H.I.E.L.D. has determined that his own organization is compromised, and his response is to go further off the books, not to build internal accountability mechanisms, not to create a transparent process for identifying and removing the infiltration, to operate alone, in secret, sharing information with almost nobody, making unilateral decisions about the security of the entire planet. He tells Tony Stark. He does not tell Captain America. And Steve Rogers, the one person in the entire show who had been arguing since season 1 that the problem with S.H.I.E.L.D. was that it operated without enough transparency and accountability, is the person kept out of the information loop while the Skrulls are sitting in the team meetings. The irony is not subtle. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s answer to the problem of secret operations undermining trust was to run a more secret operation, and the person most likely to have caught the Skrull imposter early was deliberately excluded from the intelligence because Fury's operating model had no room for the kind of principled oversight Steve Rogers represented. Now look at what happens on the Skrull prison ship. Steve Rogers is captured. He is being held alongside agents from S.H.I.E.L.D., S.W.O.R.D., AIM, and Hydra. Every organization that is supposed to be on opposing sides of every conflict on Earth is locked in the same cells. None of them trust each other. All of them have reasons to believe the others are Skrull infiltrators. Steve Rogers, with no resources and no backup and no institutional authority, talks every single one of them into working together long enough to escape and get back to Earth. Not by appealing to hierarchy, not by invoking S.H.I.E.L.D.'s authority or the Avengers' reputation, by making a moral argument about what the situation actually required, and trusting the people in front of him to respond to it. This is the show telling you directly what Steve Rogers is and what S.H.I.E.L.D. is not. S.H.I.E.L.D. operates through hierarchy, clearance, and controlled information. Steve Rogers operates through moral clarity and direct trust. When the institutional structures collapse completely, and the only thing left is whether the people in the room can decide to work together, Steve's approach is the only one that functions. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s approach had produced the situation they were all in. Steve's approach got them out of it. Here is what the Skrull invasion actually was, when you trace it back to the beginning. The Skrulls did not defeat S.H.I.E.L.D. with superior power. They defeated S.H.I.E.L.D. with the same structural weaknesses Steve Rogers had been identifying since season 1. An organization that runs covert operations without internal transparency is an organization that cannot tell its own assets from its enemies. S.H.I.E.L.D. had proven that with Black Widow in season 1. An organization that builds infrastructure outside normal accountability because it is convenient is an organization that creates vulnerabilities it cannot protect. S.H.I.E.L.D. had proven that with Prison 42. An organization whose leadership responds to internal compromise by going further into secrecy rather than building better accountability is an organization that will be blind to the next infiltration. Fury had proven that by going dark and excluding Cap from the Skrull intelligence. The Skrulls did not find a gap in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s defenses. They walked through the door that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s operating model had been leaving open for 2 seasons, and Steve Rogers had been standing next to that door pointing at it the entire time. Now look at the record as a sequence of specific moments. The Black Widow operation. S.H.I.E.L.D. runs a covert asset so far off the books that the organization brands her a traitor when the mission goes wrong. Cap sees a structural problem. S.H.I.E.L.D. sees a tactical inconvenience. Nothing changes. Prison 42. S.H.I.E.L.D. builds a detention facility in a dimension outside any oversight or accountability. Cap objects on principle. The team treats it as operational. The prison becomes a crisis exactly because of the accountability gap Cap identified. Nothing changes. Nick Fury goes dark. The director of S.H.I.E.L.D. determines his own organization is compromised and responds by operating more secretly rather than building better accountability structures. Cap is excluded from the intelligence. The Skrull imposter sits in team meetings for months. Nothing changes. The Skrull invasion hits. Every institution S.H.I.E.L.D. was supposed to protect is compromised simultaneously. S.H.I.E.L.D., S.W.O.R.D., the Helicarrier, Avengers Mansion. The infiltration succeeds at scale precisely because the operating model Steve Rogers had been criticizing made it impossible to detect from the inside. 4 moments. Same pattern every time. S.H.I.E.L.D. prioritizes operational efficiency and secrecy over the accountability and transparency security Steve Rogers kept arguing for. The gap that creates is exactly the gap the next threat exploits. That is not coincidence. That is a two-season demonstration of what happens when an organization mistakes secrecy for security. There is one more thing this show does that almost nobody discusses. After the Skrull invasion is over, after the real Steve Rogers comes back, after Tony's device forces every Skrull on Earth back into their true form in front of the whole world, S.H.I.E.L.D. does not change. Maria Hill is still running operations the same way. The institutional culture that made the infiltration possible is still the institutional culture. The specific structural problems Steve had identified, the covert operations without internal accountability, the facilities built outside normal oversight, the leadership model that responds to compromise with more secrecy, none of it gets examined. The show ends before we see what comes next, but the pattern is clear. S.H.I.E.L.D. learned the wrong lesson from the Skrull invasion. It learned that the enemy was the Skrulls. It did not learn that the enemy had used S.H.I.E.L.D.'s own operating model as the blueprint for the attack. Steve Rogers could have told them. He had been telling them for 2 seasons. Nobody listened. Right that an organization built on secrecy and unilateral decision-making was an organization that could not protect itself from internal compromise. Right that Prison 42 was a structural problem and not a practical solution. Right that Fury going dark was not an answer to infiltration, but an acceleration of the exact conditions that made infiltration possible. Right that the Skrull invasion was not an intelligence failure. It was the outcome of an institutional culture that had been choosing operational convenience over accountability since the first episode. He was right every time, in every room where the argument happened, and S.H.I.E.L.D. kept operating the same way regardless. The thing about Steve Rogers is that he never stopped working inside the system while disagreeing with it. He never walked away from the mission because the institution running it was flawed. He kept showing up, kept making the argument, kept being the person in the room willing to say, this is wrong and here is why. Not because he thought they would listen, because the mission required someone to keep saying it, whether they did or not. That is not stubbornness. That is the only version of integrity that actually costs something. Go back and watch any scene in this show where Captain America pushes back against how S.H.I.E.L.D. operates. Any moment where the team reads him as idealistic or difficult or unwilling to accept how the real world works. Watch it again. He is not performing the moral hero. He is doing the only thing that actually matters when you are inside an institution that is slowly becoming the thing it was built to prevent. He is keeping the line visible, even when nobody else can see it.